Welcome to This Week in Wrestling History.
All right, everyone, welcome back to This Week in Wrestling History. As always, we're your hosts, Jacob and Ryan. So we got something weird this week, don't we?
I wouldn't say weird. It's more festive than anything.
It's seasonally appropriate. So being that the Christmas season is upon us, what we're going to do this week is, if you checked our Facebook out, you'll know Jacob went and found 10, right?
Yeah, 10 with honorable mentions.
10 seasonally appropriate bits, scenes.
Yeah. Skits. I
Skits.
guess.
So usually I'm assuming most of them are going to be from episodes of Raw with Santa on them.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen these yet. So what we're going to do is right now we'll watch them. We'll pause the recording for a second. I'll watch whatever he went out and found. And then we'll come back and we'll talk about it a little bit. So here's what I'm going to try to do to give it a little bit of structure. I'm going to try to guess when it's from. I'm going to try to guess what the major angles that were going on around it that it was trying to progress. And then I'll maybe give it a grade or something.
I feel like a lot of these aren't going to have those.
Well, that's fine too.
But, all right. So, first one.
All right.
We're going to start this. We're going to watch it. And then we're going to come back and Ryan's going to react to it.
All right, here we go. All right, so the date was plastered all over this, so I don't even get to guess on this one. It was from December 22nd, 1997.
Yep.
It was Stone Cold Steve Austin stunning Santa after Santa was a jerk to some kid in the crowd. So, 97, obviously we're in the middle of the Attitude Era. Stone Cold was on his rise.
Funny enough, we just talked about this last episode. This was only a couple of short months later.
I think it must have been
Like
a week or 2.
weeks, yeah, actually.
So we're weeks after Austin chucking the IC belt into the river. Now Austin is stunning Santa, who we were just saying, it sounds like John Laurinaitis, but obviously wasn't.
No, because Laurinaitis was with All Japan Pro Wrestling at the time.
But in retrospect, one of the funnier things was the kid that... So prior to Stone Cold coming out and that whole thing, some kid from the crowd was brought in and said, "You're not the real Santa."
They bring the crowd in, or the kid from the crowd in, to do the whole, look at, it's Santa Claus, tell him what you want for Christmas. And the kid sits down, looks at him and goes, "You're not the real Santa."
So as it turns out, this was 12-year-old, it was either Jimmy or Jay Uso.
Yeah, funny enough, it was one of the Uso brothers. At this point, they weren't the, quote, son of the WWE Hall of Famer Rikishi. They were the Sultan's kids.
The Sultan's kids. Yeah, it's probably worked out for the best for them that Rikishi went on to bigger and better things.
Yeah.
All right, so yeah, we're starting off with Stone Cold Steve Austin. When I think back to Christmas skits on Raw with Santa, this is kind of the stereotypical one I think of. Because, again, it was the embodiment of the Attitude Era. Of course, we had to make sure that, hey, kids, this isn't the real Santa. Right. And then Stone Cold just taking the guy out.
What's funnier is that this is probably one of the most brutal stunners I think I've ever seen.
This guy really took that stunner. Normally, you're supposed to drop to your knees with the stunner, but...
Guy laid flat like a board as soon as he came down.
He like jumped forward into it, and he was completely off the ground when Austin hit. So that had to hurt a bit.
Yeah, it was something, to say the least.
All right. I guess we're up to the next episode. Hold on. All right, so for clip number 2, that was completely disgusting. We had the Boogeyman and Santa Vito.
Yep.
And the Boogeyman was feeding him a handful of worms on SmackDown. So cross over to SmackDown. This one didn't give me any hint as to the year. It's Boogeyman. It's SmackDown. I didn't really watch SmackDown for quite a while in the late aughts. So I'm going to guess it's like 2008, 2009.
A little bit earlier. It was actually Armageddon 2005.
Wow. 2005, he was around that early.
Yeah,
okay.
This actually took place at a pay-per-view in 2005.
Man, that's kind of sad.
Right.
Okay, so
They
pay-per-view
actually-
2005. I'm guessing there must have been some horrible mid-card angle between Boogeyman and Vito.
Yeah, this was kind of as the Boogeyman was just starting to show up.
Okay.
So he'd only been around for a little bit before this, so it was kind of his intro to the main card thing.
All right, yeah, he shoved Santa's mouth full of worms, and that was utterly gross.
Yeah, I figured you might get a little kick out of that.
Yeah, great, thanks. That nothing says happy holidays like a mouthful of worms.
Funny enough, Nunzio was actually a part of this whole skit too. They didn't show him; he was playing an elf. Go figure.
Cousin Nunzio, Jamie Noble's cousin.
Yes.
All right. Anything else to say about this one before we move on?
Well, I was trying to find a little bit more about, the backstory to it and everything, but there really wasn't much to it. It was just kind of Boogeyman versus Santa Nunzio, or Santa Vito.
You know, so, all right. So Armageddon 2005, if you want to see, I'm guessing probably the first pay-per-view appearance of Boogeyman.
Yeah, I think that's what it ended up being.
He never did anything as a character, right? Like they never did anything other than
They tried to push him for a little bit. The only issue that they had with him was that he was older during this time.
Oh, that's right. He was an older guy.
He was late 30s during his run here. But I mean, he had the build for it.
He was in good shape, but he didn't seem like he did much in the ring, and the only thing he really did was he was gross by eating worms.
Yeah. I mean, he had a couple of decent moves, but he was relatively slow, which at this point you have Undertaker, JBL, and Batista, who are all the big slow guys on SmackDown at the time.
Right, and Boogeyman's definitely not as big as any of them, so.
Right.
I mean, he was like a modern-day Papa Shango, which I don't think is going to play too well.
No, he was around for a couple years, but he was relatively injury prone too.
Ooh.
That's kind of what did him in.
I mean, his gimmick really pushes him to being kind of the comedy spot on the card anyways, which,
Yeah.
I mean, as far as spots go, it's not actually the worst spot, like, money-wise in the company, but is, like, prestige-wise, usually it doesn't get you too far.
Right.
It'll get you a longer career, oddly enough, but not really a star-studded career.
Exactly. Quick 2 points off of this pay-per-view. Actually, decent matches happened. Undertaker versus Randy Orton in a Hell in a Cell.
Ooh.
With Bob Orton in Randy's corner.
Ooh, so what I remember about that feud was reading on the internet that Undertaker got super pissed because Bob was working with hepatitis
Mm-hmm.
and was bleeding
Yep.
and didn't happen to tell anyone.
Yep.
Yeah, so Bob didn't hang around too long after that became public knowledge.
They also on this card had the Chris Benoit versus Booker T best of 7 matches for the U.S. title. This was number 4 out of the series.
I swear the two of them had a best of 7 series in WCW proper.
I'm sure they did.
I know at least Booker T had a best of 7 series with someone, I think, in WCW.
Given aside from what Chris Benoit is remembered for, those 7 matches are by far some of the best matches I think I've ever seen Booker T have, let alone Chris Benoit.
Fair enough. I'm not going to recommend anyone go back and watch them because that's not what I'm about, but I get it. All right. Moving on to Santa moment number 3. All right, so number 3, we have Santa Mick Foley getting hit by Alberto Del Rio's car.
Yeah, so this is...
Let me guess here.
Okay.
So it looked like it was on Raw.
Mm-hmm.
I do not know Alberto's original run. I want to say, I'm guessing 2010, 2011.
Actually, from what I'm reading, it was a little bit later than that.
Okay, so
Just a tad
like
bit.
2013, 12, 13 maybe?
12. Yep.
Okay, perfect. So we have Mick Foley walking to the crowd and slapping hands and all that good stuff. Alberto Del Rio's music comes out. Alberto drives out. some poor camera work later, we have Mick Foley being hit by a car and hit by a Christmas tree that got knocked over on top of him as well. So I'm guessing this was during Alberto's initial climb to the top
Yes.
on Raw, and we later then cut to the backstage with all of the superstars very upset that Santa was hit by a car.
You get Titus O'Neil yelling in the background, "What about the kids?"
And Alberto walks up, everyone's booing him, and Cena walks up and has some of the worst overacting I've ever seen.
The fact that he comes up running to Alberto Del Rio and goes, "What are you doing, man?" with this awful accent.
Right, with his awful Boston, like he was literally using the Cena making fun of you voice, "Hey, me," tone.
Exactly. So then Booker T ends up making a match for Alberto versus John Cena. And Booker puts his hand on Cena's shoulder and says, "Do it for Santa Claus, man."
Yeah, do it for Santa.
Which
Was this actually the start of their feud, or were they already feuding?
I believe this was around the early beginning of it. It wasn't the first time they had wrestled, so...
Okay, I would be pretty upset, honestly, if their excuse for feuding was Alberto hitting Santa with his car.
Yeah, that's not something great to build a feud on.
Yeah, I'm guessing this was probably near the start of Cena's downfall, I would guess. I didn't see any CM Punk here. But
You didn't see any CM Punk in it, but he was there because if you look in the background when
they're panning around the shop.
when Santa's getting run over,
Uh-huh.
there's lots of the black and yellow GTS shirts in the crowd.
Okay.
So it was around that point.
Was he on SmackDown maybe at this time? Or were they merged again by this time?
I could not tell you for certain.
Okay, fair enough. So 2012, Santa getting hit by Alberto Del Rio's nice car.
Which grown adults upset about Santa Claus getting hit by a car is essentially the epitome of the PG era.
It really, you nailed that one. That really, really is just kind of, that is so typical of that time period. All right, let's go to number 4. Okay, one thing I forgot about our last one that I want to mention real quick is I'm guessing it must have taken place in Philadelphia because they were chanting, "You killed Santa, clap, 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 clap. You killed Santa."
I would assume so.
Okay, so for number 4, it was, unfortunately I saw this, so this was cheating, Armageddon 2004. So a year before we were feeding worms to people.
Correct.
We had the Kurt Angle Invitational.
Yeah, this was during his run where he would pick hometown heroes to come and try to take his gold medal from him.
I'm guessing this had to be right near the end of Kurt's run with the WWE.
Yeah, because shortly after this, ECW would show up. He'd go over there for a little bit, and then he would get kicked off to Impact.
Yeah, he would get what's their word for firing people? Future endeavored.
Yes.
He would get future endeavored because of drug problems, get sent over. TNA would pick him up, and he'd spend about a decade over there.
Yeah, he was their golden boy for a long time.
So, all right, this was the lead up to that. So, Kurt Angle calls out Santa Claus. Santa comes out. We were trying to figure out who it is. The internet seems to think it was either Domino or William Regal.
Which it looks like Regal.
It looked way more like Regal to me than Domino. Granted, I don't know what he really looks like, but besides the greaser thing.
Yeah.
But I think it was Regal. Comes out, collar and elbow, ties up with Santa, shoves him, and then Angle slams him.
And then puts him into the ankle lock and refuses to let go. Does his new little piece that he's started doing more recently is where he'd lay down with his leg all the way up to his chest and start
like he was
cranking it.
like he was putting a knee bar on.
Yeah.
All right. Did that further any angle for Angle?
It was literally just another installment of the Angle Invitational.
All right, so that's
Now,
that.
mind you, during this pay-per-view, there was some other decent things that were happening. I mean, you had Rey Mysterio and Rob Van Dam as the WWE Tag Champs.
Oh, that's it. Mysterio got paired with the weirdest people.
Hit Rob Van Dam, Edge,
Yeah.
Batista.
It works, but it's weird.
You also had where is it? Oh, John Cena versus Jesus with Carlito over the U.S. title. This is when he debuts, or just before this, he debuts the Spinner U.S. belt, and he had that whole feud with Carlito for a while.
I hate any spinner belt.
Yeah, they're not good. The only one that I was okay with was the Rated R Superstar one.
But that one didn't spin. Well, it did originally, but
Yeah, it
they
was
stopped it.
The giant star.
Right, but
spin.
then they stop it from being a spinner.
When they went back to the Spinner WWE belt, they just kept the WWE logo in place.
I hated the spinner stuff. That was the biggest travesty of anything
Yeah.
to belt wise I've ever seen in WWE was the spinner crap.
Oh, yeah. This was also during the time where JBL had the WWE title, and he had his... This was either during or just before he got his cabinet.
Oh, because that's when he had the Jillian Hall.
The Basham brothers.
Oh, the Basham. That's what it was.
and
Yep.
Orlando.
Orlando Jordan.
Yes.
Gotcha.
So he was actually WWE champ at the time. And
Yeah.
it was a fatal four-way between him, Booker T, Eddie Guerrero, and The Undertaker for the title.
That sounds like such a weird match to me.
It does.
I'm sure it was good, but that sounds so weird.
You also had, speaking of, the Basham brothers were on this card. So it was a thing for a little bit, and it was also towards the end of the Cruiserweight title, because this is when Funaki took it off of Spike Dudley.
Yeah, you're running pretty much out of people there if that's who you're going to with your belt.
I believe.
Not that actually Funaki's bad by any means, but it's just he was a joke character, unfortunately, and meh.
Yeah. Let me see here, because I believe this was... Because this was in 04, we said, right?
Correct.
Actually, it would go on for another 3 years.
Oh, all right. So
But this was it was 2 years before Gregory Helms had the belt, when he was actually Gregory Helms and not
not the Hurricane,
not the Hurricane, not Sugar Shane.
just Gregory Helms.
Yep. And he was the longest reigning Cruiserweight champion. He held the belt for 385 days that time around.
That's pretty respectable.
Yeah. He had it for a good long while.
All right. So that was Santa moment number 4. Santa getting angle slammed and ankle locked. All right, event number 5. I'm guessing that had to be the late 80s or early 90s. It was Roddy Piper is a good guy, so I'm guessing more towards the 90s than the 80s. It featured Santa Bobby the Brain Heenan telling the children that Santa's not real, which Piper obviously comes out and is like, what is your malfunction? And then pummels the crap out of the Brain.
So it was actually Christmas Day, 1989.
Christmas Day 1989. All right.
Yep. Piper comes out and does the whole, there's a bunch of kids watching, you're trying to ruin this, what's the matter with you? And Bobby goes, I'll fix it.
And doesn't fix anything whatsoever.
And proceeds to drop a relative insider term with swerve.
Yeah.
And takes his hat off, takes the beard and the glasses and the hair off, and goes...
And doubles down on the whole spiel. Yep. And then Piper pummels the ever-loving crap out of the guy.
And all the while, you have Gorilla Monsoon sitting next to them going, whoa! Whoa!
So, I fathom this was not at all part of any sort of larger angle.
It didn't seem like it, especially if you look at it. They're sitting in like that old...
The old like WWF studios.
Yeah.
At most, I could only imagine this would have been to write Roddy Piper off TV for a while for assaulting an announcer.
Yeah, because at this point, or I'm sorry, at one point, Heenan says, if he touches me, he's gone.
Right. So I'm imagining maybe there was a bit of a feud between Piper and some of Heenan's stable, maybe. Overall, again, I don't think this was part of any larger thing.
Yeah, from what I'm reading is that there wasn't much to it after that.
Yeah, like I said, I'm guessing maybe if anything it was just to write Piper off TV for a little bit while he either contract renegotiations or whatever was going on back in the late 80s.
Also, if you go to roughly, there's plenty of videos of it online. If you go to roughly about the 2 minute mark, 2 minute and 4 second mark, you can actually hear Bobby under his breath call Roddy Piper a dick.
Wow. Okay, so thanks, Bobby the Brain Heenan. That one was just mean. That wasn't even nice. That was just mean.
That's why I chose it. It's one of those that Heenan was a heel through and through.
Yeah, he was.
And at this point, how much more heel could you get on Christmas Day?
I mean, that's way up there.
I feel like the only way you could have gotten even more heel is if you beat up a guy dressed as Santa and then said, Santa's not real, kids.
You don't do that on Christmas. That's not okay.
Still funny.
No, that's not okay. All right, moving on.
All right, Gorilla.
Exactly. Would you stop? All right, on to number 6. All right. Number 6 was Santa Mick Foley versus Bad Santa JBL. We had Joey Styles on announcing. So I'm guessing and it was Christmas for the troops. So they were overseas because they were clearly in the desert.
Yeah, this was around the time where they were doing tribute to... They've always done tribute to the troops around Christmas, but there's been a couple of times where for a while in the middle, it wasn't. But this was like one of their earlier ones.
Right, so I'm guessing this was I'm going to guess 2002 maybe?
It's actually 05.
05. Man, my time on things is just straight off, apparently.
Yeah.
All right, so shortly after Boogeyman, apparently we had JBL being evil Kris Kringle.
Yep. And Mick Foley ends up beating JBL with a bag of toys and then takes out salad tongs.
And then grabs him in the nuts. Or Joey Styles to it, salad tongs to the tomatoes. All right, so Mick Foley at this point was just more or less a goodwill ambassador. He wasn't really active wrestling.
No, this was him pretty much just showing up every now and then, kind of like he was doing more recently.
Yeah, just kind of like during his commissioner time, just every once in a while show up, do a thing, maybe take a small bump, and then
exactly.
Moving on. So probably also during JBL's cabinet time, you were saying previously.
Yes, just before that.
Just before the cabinet. So JBL, the champ, just kind of getting him some airtime over on Raw. All right, that was a thing. Next. All right, so number 7 was Mankind versus a gang of Santas in a boiler room brawl match.
Yeah, this was a thing.
The gang of Santas ended up being the Mean Street Posse, so I'm guessing this was 99.
It was, you are correct, December 20th, 1999.
All right, so Mean Street Posse versus Mick Foley. I'm guessing that's just kind of furthering the stereotypical Shane's got the Mean Street Posse, kind of the corporation versus everyone angle.
Exactly. What ended up happening is later on in the night, Foley ends up walking into 2 more very angry-looking Santas, which ended up being Billy Gunn and Road Dogg. And he ended up...
New Age Santas.
Yes. And they ended up just beating the snot out of Foley.
Because he probably thought it was the Mean Street Posse still and took them for granted. All right, so... Well, that kind of makes sense in their context. The New Age Outlaws did kind of have a running feud with Mankind for quite a while.
Mankind, Foley, Dude Love, whatever character he was.
Which is odd for a while when DX helped Mankind win the championship from Rock at one point.
Right.
So, all right. Well,
that was a thing.
That's a thing in wrestling history. So, all right. Moving on. All right, for number 8, we have another tribute to the troops. We're out in the desert. Vince McMahon comes down.
This is the first ever tribute to the troops. So
Okay,
he does his spiel about, thank you for everything you do. You guys are the reason why we're here. We're coming here to support you. And then Santa Claus comes out.
Then Santa comes out. McMahon turns into his old Mr. McMahon type role.
Yeah, it gives him the whole, what are you doing out here? You're not supposed to be out here. I'm the one talking.
And Vince kind of gets in Santa's face, and Santa takes his beard and hat off. It's Stone Cold and Stunner for Vince.
Yep, Stunner for Vince right off the bat to kick off tribute to the troops in Baghdad.
Who doesn't love that?
I mean, if you're gonna do something like this, you might as well send the big guns over for the very first
Right.
one.
So this is already after Austin had left the company the first time.
Correct, because that was in
2001, I want to say 2001 or 2.
Yeah, it was.
Right, yeah, around there.
Yeah, and this was after the whole Brock versus Goldberg with Stone Cold as the ref match.
So this was after. So I think that was WrestleMania 2002. So this would have been the year after that, I believe.
Yes.
Or maybe it was earlier this year, even in 2003, even. But still,
You guys will have to fact check us on some of this stuff.
yeah. Sorry, this episode was a little bit on the fly. Most of the research time was spent finding the actual episodes, not the stuff that happened kind of around them.
Right.
So, entertaining, Stone Cold, stunning Vince, but more just a F Mr. McMahon more than a progression of any storyline that was already going on.
Exactly.
Always decent though. So, all right, on to number 9. Okay, next up we have the debut of Evil Santa Claus.
Santa Claus with
AKA
an X.
Yes, Santa Claus. So this was Ted DiBiase bringing, or supposedly buying Santa Claus out and making him evil. I don't know what exactly the...
Well, the whole thing is that there was a fear that, because Ted DiBiase's thing was everybody's got a price.
Even Santa, so...
Yes, it was this big fear that before Santa Claus came out that Ted DiBiase had bought Santa. However, Santa Claus comes out, and then later on in the night, actual Santa comes out, and everybody's a little bit happier that DiBiase didn't actually buy Santa.
Yeah, so this was the mid-90s, obviously, because, well, everyone's got a job, even Santa.
Yep, 1995.
95. So we looked it up. Santa Claus was actually Balls Mahoney
Yeah, looking
pre-ECW days.
looking super young and buzz cut hair.
Yeah, buzz cut hair, buzz cut, real low shaved beard, all dyed black. So looking so he was dressed up in a Santa suit, except where Santa's suit is white, Santa Claus's was black.
Yeah, I was surprised that they almost didn't pull like a Russian thing with Santa Claus here.
Oh, yeah, I see what you're saying. Make him give him a bad Russian accent and everything.
Yeah.
So the only thing I can really think as far as this being historic is this must have been right near the tail end of DiBiase's little stable that had included Tatanka and Bam Bam Bigelow. In the mid-90s, after he stopped being a wrestler, he was kind of more of a manager for a stable. And shortly after his stable fell apart, he brought in the Ringmaster.
Yep.
And obviously the Ringmaster gimmick was the dirt worst.
Mm-hmm.
And Ringmaster ended up making something of himself, though.
Yeah, he turned into somebody decent.
Actually, this must have been really close to that because he brought out Santa Claus to feud with Savio Vega. Savio Vega ended up feuding with the Ringmaster.
Mm-hmm.
And the end of their feud was if the Ringmaster lost, Ted DiBiase got fired. And the Ringmaster lost, and the next night came out and was like, what are you going to do now that DiBiase lost? And obviously the Ringmaster was Stone Cold Steve Austin. And I remember hearing him that he cut the promo of, who says I didn't lose intentionally to get that dead weight off me? And it was like,
yeah.
we
This
may have something here.
This is where the shift starts.
Yeah, this was right before that whole thing started. Okay.
Exactly.
So Santa Claus, a hot nothing. But
they
it was tangential to something.
They had done all of this during the feud with Savio Vega because Savio had ended up telling DiBiase that he still believed in the magic of Santa Claus.
Ah.
This brought about Santa Claus because Ted DiBiase bought Santa, and yeah, leads into the Ringmaster stuff.
All right, so that's not too bad. All right, so we're on to our last one here now.
Yep, very last one, and we're going to send everybody home happy with this one.
All right, we'll be right back. All right, and for our final Santa moment of the year, we have Bret the Hitman Hart asking Santa for an opponent for Survivor Series 1992, where Bret was the champ.
Yep, Bret asks Santa, I'd like you to bring me the best around because I want to prove to myself and to everybody that I'm the best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be.
And out comes Shawn Michaels.
So Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart have a WWF World Heavyweight title match
At Survivor Series 92, and I don't remember this match or move for move, but knowing the two guys that are in it,
can only assume it was pretty decent.
exactly. So that's a pretty good present from Santa there.
Yeah, and of course Bret retains.
Bret keeps the belt.
Yep, Shawn taps out to the sharpshooter, and afterwards Bret Hart asks Santa for world peace.
Yeah, this was during Shawn's first heel run. We're not too terribly long after the barbershop incident. He's firmly in the sexy boy heel mode.
Has he lost his smile yet?
No, he has not yet lost his smile. They have not yet had their WrestleMania match where they start their real super serious feud. This wasn't really part of the whole Bret Shawn thing, but it's definitely an early kind of sign towards things to come in that.
Yeah, I can only assume that this was kind of a precursor to people in the company looking at it and being like, we might have something with the two of these guys together.
Right. This was Bret's first run. That whole run was kind of defined by Bret being the fighting champion. He defended the belt on, I think, almost every show they had.
I think this is where they kind of started coming up with the fighting champion kind of gimmick, quote unquote.
Right. And I think it was really done as a counterpart to the Hulk Hogan era where you saw him, almost kind of like how Brock is, where you see him once, twice, maybe 4 times a year.
Yeah, he shows up for each one of the major pay-per-views and doesn't always defend the belt either.
Yeah, exactly. So I think this was done to show that they were going in a new direction. We got some smaller guys, some more athletic guys, than not necessarily these giants anymore.
Yeah, the guys that'll actually put on a good match instead of it just being all show.
Right. So, all right. Well, that was our top 10 Santa moments. Hopefully you all enjoyed that. We were just trying something a little bit different for the holiday season here.
Yeah, it's always fun to see stuff like this when Santa shows up. I can only assume he's going to show up at Tribute to the Troops that shows up in tomorrow.
Or SmackDown is actually on Christmas next week. So
that's true. I didn't see, because they taped that already. I didn't see
no spoilers.
Yeah, I didn't see if Santa had showed up. But
no, they can
might
always
have to
edit something in afterwards too,
Yeah,
especially when they have a week lead time on it.
I have to go back and reread some of that stuff. He might even show up on Raw, because Raw was, again, taped.
Right. Oh, was it taped already?
Yep,
Oh,
they did
all
the
right.
exact same thing that they did with SmackDown.
No. Doubled up. All right. Anyways, just some bookkeeping stuff real quick. No new show next week. We're going to take a week off because, we don't want to record on Christmas or the day after, honestly.
Yeah, I'll pass on that.
Yeah, so we will be back after New Year's. So Merry Christmas to everyone. Happy holidays. Happy New Year.
Happy whatever it is you see.
Whatever you
fit.
celebrate, have a good one. Plugs?
Twitter, WrestleHistPod. I'd like a little bit more interaction on that. I see a bunch of people retweeting stuff, but nobody ever says anything to me, and I'm the only one that messes around with that.
Yeah,
so.
I don't do Twitter, so you're all lonely over there.
Yeah,
I'm over on Facebook, This Week in Wrestling History on Facebook.
yeah, we get lots of stuff on Facebook.
Yeah, we get some more there. Do we have a YouTube yet? Thinking maybe?
We don't have it just yet. I'm
Working
still
on it?
toying with editing the audio with videos
All
and
right,
stuff
so
like that.
maybe we'll
but,
have some new stuff soon.
YouTube is coming by the time we come back for the new year.
All right. Well, so we'll be back with some video stuff to show off. If you want to email us, wrestlinghistorypodcast@gmail.com.
And you can find us at Google Play or the new Google Podcasts app, Spotify and iTunes. This week in wrestling history.
All right. I think that's it for us.
Yep.
We're history.